UFC 279 is upon us, and I'm going to be breaking down every single fight from the early prelims to the main event, starting from bottom to top. And yeah, let's get right into it. We have a pretty solid card now because the UFC decided to add more fights to it, which was not a good card maybe a few weeks ago. But yeah, with the additions to Kevin Holland versus Daniel Rodriguez and Jingliang Lee versus Tony Ferguson, we do have a pretty solid card now. So yeah, let's get started. For the first matchup on the card, we have Darian Weeks versus Yohan Lainesse. Weeks, his last fight was a loss against Ian Garry, is 0-2 in the UFC, has a solid chin, has good leg kicks and teeps to the body, has some decent power in his hands, isn't super technical on the feet, but does kind of swing wild with his punches, wings shots quite a bit, has some good wrestling. But Ian Garry had stuff, all the takedowns in their last fight. Lainesse, last fight was a TKO loss to Gabe Green. He is currently 1-1 in the UFC, including his Contender Series matchup. He has a solid chin, doesn't get hit too much because of his length and his ability to keep a distance. Does not have good cardio, gassed out in the Gabe Green fight in the late second round. Has a good right hook, although it is slow, can catch guys and put them out cold. It's definitely, I don't want to say telegraphed, but you can definitely see his hook coming. Caught his Contender Series opponent and Gabe Green in both of their fights and sent them on their backs. Has some decent grappling, good calf kicks. This matchup is very interesting because I think there are a few instances and occurrences that can make this fight go either way. Lainesse will have a 4-inch reach advantage in this fight. They will cancel each other out on the ground. I don't believe Yohan Lainesse can get taken down. I don't think he can take down Darian Weeks. Weeks couldn't get Ian Garry down. He did have good takedown defense, and I think the winner will be decided on the feet. I think Weeks will try to clinch like the Garry fight and try and walk him down, put his back towards the cage and either clinch or fire off shots. I think Lainesse will be able to keep his distance and hit him with some good shots, although Weeks seems like a little bit more technical fighter than Lainesse. I think there might be a bigger distance and power reach advantage here that I don't know if Darian Weeks will be able to overcome. I can see Lainesse working the jab and leg kicks, winning the first 2 rounds, and then Weeks winning the last one, putting Lainesse in some trouble. But I think Lainesse will win 29-28, but him gassing out and Weeks hitting body shots at the end of the fight in the later rounds makes sense also, but I'm going to go Lainesse here. So yeah, I am going to go Lainesse here. I am not super confident in this pick like at all. In general, Lainesse does kind of gas out towards the end of the rounds. Gabe Green worked his body quite a bit and absolutely destroyed him. That's how he lost in his last fight due to body shots. So yeah, that's what I'm a little worried about here, but I am going to take Lainesse here. I think the power and his length will be a big issue for Darian Weeks here. I don't think it's going to be forced on the feet, so takedowns will not be an issue here. Moving on up the card, we have Elise Reed versus Melissa Martinez. Elise Reed, last fight was a loss to Sam Hughes. Has some good solid stand-up, has some pop in her shots, is really open when she throws punches and can be counter-shotted quite a bit. Isn't good on the ground either. Melissa Martinez, or Super Melly is what they call her, I guess. Her last fight was a win in Combat 51 against Desiree Yanez. Combat 51, I believe, is that WWE fighter versus Tito Ortiz. She does have some good shots, does have a little bit of power in her hands, has good shot selection, good takedown defense, hasn't fought in almost 3 years. For this fight, there's not much to go off of with her either. She hasn't fought in a while, so I don't know who will win this fight. Martinez hasn't fought in MMA in 3 years. She's only 25 years old, but still looks like she's training and doing boxing since then. So has she advanced her craft? In reality, this is most likely a coin flip, but I am going to lean this to Melissa Martinez. I'm just going to give her the underdog here. I am hoping that she has trained her boxing and things like that in her off time. I looked at her Instagram. It looks like she's been doing that. That's my hope. Melissa Martinez will win the fight. Up the card, we have Chad Anheliger versus Alateng. Anheliger, last fight was a KO victory over Jesse Strader. Has some good power in his hands. Something that would probably move up over time, be more effective over the course of the fight. It'll land more, do some more damage over the fight, and knock the guy finally out, drop him or something like that. The damage will accumulate over time is basically what I'm saying. Good takedown defense, is able to get up immediately when being taken down. Does have some weird misses on the feet, but is able to connect every once in a while and do some relatively decent damage there. For Alateng, last fight was a win over Kevin Kroom. Has some good power in his hands, is very technical, but is very tough. Took some very hard shots versus Casey Kenny. In this matchup, it is very close. I think Alateng will win this fight. Alateng has got some good power in his hands, like I said, that could impact the scoring or could TKO someone. He seems more technical than Anheliger and throws harder shots than him, which will impact the scoring of the fight. So I am taking Alateng in this matchup. Up the card, we have Norma Dumont versus Danyelle Wolf. Dumont, her last fight was a loss to Macy Chiasson. Missed weight in her last fight, has some good takedown defense, good power with some very technical strikes. She's a very big girl for the division and is relatively very strong. Wolf, last fight was a win over Tanisha Tennant on the Contender Series. Has some good boxing, had a record of 27-14, but does have some good technique, even though the record's like a little iffy, like has some good technique on the feet, definitely a pretty solid boxer. Is 39 years old now. Good power in her hands, did okay against the takedowns, but the MMA fight IQ for grappling is not really there. She did jump the gilly against Tanisha Tennant towards like the end of the fight. Didn't really get in there, but if that happens in this fight, she's going to lose if she jumps the gilly, but women's MMA can do that sometimes. For this lower level women's MMA, this fight is mostly interesting because we don't know what Danyelle Wolf will look like. Her last MMA fight was 2 years ago, and she is 39 years old. She also holds a 3-inch reach advantage in this fight. In Dumont's last fight against Chiasson, she struggled more technical strikes from Chiasson. Wolf is very technical and has a lot more power in her hands. I can see Dumont winning in the clinch exchanges just due to her size, and I think if this ends up on the ground, I'm going to give it to Dumont. This fight is solely dependent on what Wolf looks like when she fights, but I'm going to choose Dumont by 29-28 in this matchup. Up the card, we have Jake Collier versus Chris Barnett. Collier, his last fight was against Andrei Arlovsky. Collier has had 11 fights in the UFC and has a pattern winning one fight and then losing another, so he's basically 50-50 right now. I think he lost his last fight, so that means he's got to win the next fight, right? But heavy hands, will have some trouble lasting in the later rounds due to his pure size. Solid clinch work also. Barnett, last fight was a loss to Martin Boudet. Solid power in his hands. Good wheel kick that we saw against Gian Vellante is basically what we've seen from Chris Barnett in the UFC. I think this matchup, will lean towards Collier. I think Collier will be able to hold Barnett against the clinch just like Boudet did. Barnett struggled a lot against Boudet, and I don't think it will change here. I see Collier walking him down. I think he's just got the size and the power where he can just rush in and kind of do that damage on Chris Barnett here. I can see him grinding out a decision against the fence, or I can see him kind of like TKOing him because he does have a lot of power in his hands, is very tough on the feet also. I think he can get rocked every once in a while, but I mean, I guess he does get rocked a little bit in his fights, depending on who he's fighting, if they land a good punch on him, but he's very tough, can take quite a bit of punches, and I think that'll be the case. I'm taking Jake Collier in the fight as much as I would like to see Chris Barnett win the fight because I think he's super entertaining. But yeah, we're going Jake Collier. Up the card, we have Jamie Pickett versus Dennis Tui Luyen, I think is what you say. Dennis Tui Luyen. For Pickett, last fight was a loss to Kyle Dawkins, which you know how the Dawkins brothers are if you watch a lot of MMA. Has some decent grappling against bad opponents, but can also keep them down. Tends to overswing a lot with his hands where he ends up in the clinch, so he'll just like completely overswing into basically kind of like headbutting. I don't want to say actually headbutting, but leans his head on the dude's chest and then you just end up in the clinch. Has some really solid kicks as well. For Dennis Tui Luyen's last fight was a loss to Alexkab Kizriev. I heard John Anik say it multiple times and I still can't get it right, so hopefully I got it right there. Has some good power in his hands, has a good jab, really good takedown defense, worrying conditioning though. Although Jamie Pickett has a 3-inch reach advantage, I'm going to go with Tui Luyen. Have to slow it down just for me. In this fight, he can stuff the takedowns and maybe land some takedowns of his own and catch Jamie Pickett when he comes in to punch. Jamie Pickett overthrows his punches and guys with good timing can catch him with a jab whenever that happens. So whenever Jamie Pickett looks to go throw a punch, I noticed in the Holmes fight, he fought someone with a similar reach. I think Jamie Pickett will have a reach advantage here from what I know. But he was able to time the jab perfectly with Jamie Pickett going into punch. So I think if he times the jab relatively good here, does some leg kicks there, is able to take him down. He can't be taken down. I don't think Tui Lin will be able to get taken down because he was doing really well against Kizriev, in all honesty. In the first round, takedowns were not doing too much. Like, he would get up immediately, was against the fence, kind of laying against it. Like, he did pretty well against the takedowns in that fight. So I'm going to go with Tui Lin in that matchup. Next fight up the card is Jailton Almeida versus Anton Turkalj. Almeida, last fight was a sub win over Parker Porter. He likes to take guys immediately down and get into full mount to either ground and pound them or sub them with a rear naked choke. He's a really, really big dude. I believe this is at a catchweight of 220 for Anton Turkalj. His last fight was on the Contender Series for this year. He mostly kind of dominated the fight. I don't want to say dominated because I don't think he really did too much there, but he did grapple quite a bit, grappled pretty heavily, grappled his way to a win, and now he is already fighting on this week's card, filling in for Shamil Abdurakhimov. Does have some solid stand-up when I did look at the Contender Series stuff. If you're very familiar watching the Contender Series and you're watching this, you watch the UFC a lot, you'll notice him again. He does have some really good stand-up, even though he did not show it. Looks to be lighter than Almeida and isn't a heavy dude like Almeida is. This is at a catchweight of 220, like I stated earlier. I believe I say it in the description here. But yeah, it is at a catchweight of 220, which benefits Jailton Almeida. So yeah, for this matchup, I'm going to go with Jailton Almeida because he's the bigger guy. And Anton will be coming off a short notice fight. Anton is wild on the feet, so he does have a good chance there. But I don't think his grappling could keep up with Jailton, since most of Jailton's takedowns have to do with strength and power. I'm going to go with Jailton Almeida by a first round finish. I think it'll probably be ground and pound is my guess. But yeah, first round finish for Jailton Almeida. Bigger dude. He's going to pick him up and slam him on the ground and finish the fight there. So yeah, Jailton Almeida. Up the card, we have Hakeem Dawodu versus Julian Erosa. Dawodu, his last fight was a win over Mike Trizano. Has a loss against Movsar Evlev, where he did pretty well at defending the takedown, especially in the first round. Has a good chin from what I've seen. Likes to stand close and jab and throw 1-2s. Has decent pop in his shots also. Erosa, last fight was a win over Steven Peterson. Has wins over Charles Jourdain, Nate Landwehr, and Sean Woodson, the praying mantis. Nate Landwehr, Nate the Train from Tennessee. Has solid grappling, good power in his punches. He throws punches that are very wide, aren't super technical, and he kind of just hopes one of them lands and he hurts his opponent. For this fight, I think it could be very close depending on the strategies that these fighters use. I can see Hakeem Dawodu winning the fight by being stationary, not getting taken down, and jabbing the crap out of Julian Erosa. Erosa kind of has his head very out there off his body. Like, his stance is kind of like this. Like, he slouches over and he has his chin out. The issue that makes this fight hard to predict is the fact that Erosa has the power to hurt Dawodu badly. I'm going to take Dawodu by a 30-27 decision, and I believe that the jabs will tire out Erosa, and Dawodu will be able to avoid Erosa's biggest punches even with a 2.5-inch reach advantage. So yeah, I'm going to go with Hakeem Dawodu in this fight. Moving up on to the main card, we have Johnny Walker versus Ion Cutelaba. For Johnny Walker, his last fight was a KO loss to Jamal Hill that kind of turned into a meme a little bit. It was a very weird KO, very kind of funny KO also. Does not have a good chin at all. Does have some really hard strikes and good leg kicks and good hooks and jabs. Still has a lot of power in his hands. You could hear it in the apex, just the slapping of the leg kicks and all that. A very strong dude still. Has the length also that is very helpful for him, and does also have some good takedown defense that we saw against Ryan Spann. Cutelaba, I guess he did get taken down a little bit more towards the center of the octagon too later in that fight, so he does have some solid takedown defense. But Cutelaba, last fight was a loss to Ryan Spann. Good power in his hands, susceptible to takedowns, but has good, powerful wrestling. Can be very, I don't want to say very chinny, but can be chinny at times. Normally takes shots pretty well though. But for that Ryan Spann fight, he was kind of like, I don't want to say dominating, but he did take him down multiple times, was punching him a little bit, and then he slipped and got stuck in a guillotine. So very unfortunate for him. For this matchup, I think it will mostly rely on who hits each other first, and if Cutelaba can get a takedown. Walker will have a 7-inch reach advantage in this fight, which will make it likely difficult for Cutelaba to get inside and try and hit those punches on him. I can see Walker using his jab to set Cutelaba up with his power hand and hurting him badly. I can also see Cutelaba picking him up and taking him down and ground and pound KOing him. Either way, I think the fight will end early, and I trust Cutelaba more here. I don't know how Johnny Walker's chin is going to be after that last fight against Jamal Hill. He kind of went straight out cold. Even in the Ryan Spann fight when he fought Ryan Spann, where he kind of like TKO'd him, he got knocked down a couple times by Ryan Spann. Ryan Spann took him down multiple times. Cutelaba took down Ryan Spann multiple times. So I think Cutelaba will be able to take down Johnny Walker, be able to land some ground and pound and KO him there. If not, I think this is a kind of risky fight to bet on, because the distance here, the reach advantage here is very interesting, because Johnny Walker can like jab and throw those very powerful punches at Cutelaba, but Cutelaba can also duck and hit those powerful punches on Johnny Walker and KO him here. But I trust Cutelaba. Johnny Walker, I think, has won one fight in the last 5. So Cutelaba just lost his last fight is all it is. So I'm going to trust Cutelaba here more. The momentum might not be as much against Cutelaba in this fight as it would be Johnny Walker, because he is on a very, very steep slope going. Next fight up the card, we have Irene Aldana versus Macy Chiasson. Aldana, last fight was a win over Yana Kunitskaya, I think is how you say her name. Does get hit a little bit on the feet, but has some solid technique when she throws. Has some great power and can shut people's lights out like Ketlin Vieira and her last opponent. Absolutely insane power for the bantamweight division. This will be a very tough test for Chiasson. Chiasson last fight was a win over Norma Dumont at featherweight, so she is going back down to bantamweight for this fight. Can kind of be open on the feet. I don't want to say open, but she's kind of technical, but are spots where she does leave her chin like wide open. She can be technical on the feet though, but does maintain a good distance, so she's a very long fighter. She has a solid jab with some decent power in her hands. This fight is very interesting because Chiasson could keep this fight at a distance and control how it goes from there by jabbing and maintaining a distance and maybe clinching. She does get hit very flush sometimes, and with Aldana's power, you can't really get hit like that and keep it standing and be fine. She'll shut out Macy's lights around the second round, I believe, maybe mid-second round, late second round. I think she'll knock her out. She'll eventually catch her. Maybe Chiasson's going to be a little bit more cautious now because of that power. Maybe jab out and maybe do a little Adesanya, jab out, leg kick, go back and maybe do some clinch work, try and take her down. I don't think she's going to be able to. Maybe she can do what Holly Holm did, maybe take her down. But I am going to go with Aldana here. I think Aldana's a little bit older, but I think she will get the KO. I think she'll get that one shot is all she needs. Dumont did a lot of damage on Chiasson. Maybe that's why she went down one, but relatively Dumont versus Aldana's power, which one will probably be more effective is what you got to look at. So I'm going to go with Aldana. I'm not sure what I believe she is the favorite here, but I wouldn't mind a Chiasson underdog here. She'll probably just make it boring like the Dumont fight. Up the card, we have Kevin Holland versus Daniel Rodriguez. Holland, his last fight was a win over Tim Means. He is very long, has some good power in his hands. The move down to welterweight has been pretty good so far, so good for him. He still has that kind of power in his hands, is still very long for the division. Doesn't unload too many combos in general. Good jiu-jitsu against Tim Means especially. He's kind of like punching one at a time. Does have a solid chin, but hasn't seen it tested yet at welterweight, which will be very interesting for this matchup. So yeah, that's the tough part here, because I don't know how Holland will be able to take a punch at welterweight. Like he did fight Cowboy Oliveira, but I want to see someone that'll unload some more shots, more combos on him, and see how he takes that instead of like a Tim Means or Alex Oliveira. Daniel Rodriguez, his last fight was a win over Kevin Lee, coming off 2 hand surgeries. Was very active before getting injured and will be coming back after 1 year off. So that is a very interesting factor in this fight. Very active with his hands. Big dude. Likes to pick at the legs also. So he likes to pick at the legs, work the body, and work the head, obviously. Yeah, let's move on to the fight description and the matchup. I believe I did do an early prediction for this fight, so I will change up a couple things here. I'm feeling a little bit a different way about this fight. A lot of people in the comments felt a little differently about this fight also. But for the matchup, this fight is very tough. Close fight to choose from because they are both very fun and great fighters. Daniel Rodriguez was doing very well before his hand injury, where he was constantly active and winning fights. On the other hand, Kevin Holland will be fighting in his third welterweight fight this year and has been pretty active in his third year. Also, his last year, I say third, sorry, not his third year, his third welterweight fight. So last year he did 3 fights, and the year before that he did 5 fights. So he's been relatively active for a while. When I did my early prediction, I had said that Kevin Holland would win by a decision, but after thinking about it, Daniel Rodriguez is coming back after not fighting for a year, and I feel like he could get hurt very badly with some punches, especially with Kevin Holland's power and his very long reach in this fight. Kevin Holland will have a 7-inch reach advantage. Daniel Rodriguez is coming off a year off. It wasn't as active as he normally is. Like when you get into your routine, you're normally super active. Your body reacts to that. Taking a year off, you could be a little rusty when fighting. Kevin Holland's no joke. Has some really good power in his punches, really good length in this fight. It could be a really rough time for Daniel Rodriguez. So I think Daniel Rodriguez might get TKO'd in this fight. Maybe towards the later rounds when I think Kevin Holland will be able to avoid Daniel Rodriguez's shots in the first round. In the first round, I think it's more of a feeling out process. Maybe give it like a good 30 seconds. Like I said in the early predictions, they'll be leg kicking. They'll be jabbing at the body. We'll see more of who's going to be landing the better shots there. The first round, you'll get an idea of who's going to win the fight, in my opinion. In the first round, you'll see how someone will react to the punches. You'll see Daniel Rodriguez hit Kevin Holland, and Kevin Holland's like, oh crap, like there's a lot of power there. Pay attention to that. But if Kevin Holland hits Daniel Rodriguez and it looks like he's not reacting good to it, that's something to keep an eye on. Obviously, that's with every fight, but realistically, that's what I'm saying. Like, this is a super close fight. You'll be able to tell in the first round who's going to win this fight, and I think it'll likely end by a decision. But yeah, that's how I see the fight going. So I do have Kevin Holland by decision. Up the card, we have Jingliang Li versus Tony Ferguson. A very interesting matchup, very controversial matchup in my comments section too. I think this video kind of blew up. So it's very interesting looking at the comments and seeing the different opinions going on around it. So for Jingliang Li, his last fight was a win over Muslim Salikov, a very good win too. Has KO power, also beat Santiago Ponzinibbio, which is a great prospect, also knocked him out. Good jab, good leg kicks, and some good hooks. Can take guys down also. Is very tough all around. Can take dudes down, lay on them, ground and pound them a little bit, but has some really good power in his hands. Knocking out a guy like Muslim Salikov and Santiago Ponzinibbio is no joke. Those are some really tough matchups. Some really tough guys also. So yeah, that's the kind of power he's got in his hands. For Tony Ferguson, his last fight, he got KO'd against Michael Chandler. Flatline, brutally KO'd too. I'm a fan of both of those guys. So when I say that, it's more of like, it was very rough. He does have some good elbows, was piecing up Michael Chandler before getting KO'd. Has some good defensive jiu-jitsu also. Doesn't really take guys down, just works off his back. So I saw people in the comment section saying he's just going to take Li Jingliang down. To take Li Jingliang down, freaking Khamzat Chimaev had to pick him up and throw him on the ground. And Khamzat Chimaev's like over 200 pounds fighting at welterweight. So he's a really big dude. Like, he's picking him up and throwing him on the ground. No one does that to Jingliang Li. No one's doing that to him. And Tony Ferguson coming up from lightweight. Obviously, I think he did have a couple of welterweight fights, but he's still fighting at lightweight, so he's not going to be the heavy guy at welterweight. Looking at both of their weights, like who's going to be the heavier dude here? It's going to be Jingliang Li. But for the matchup, this fight should be really fun. Tony Ferguson is coming up from lightweight to welterweight with a 4-inch reach advantage, so that reach advantage is kind of interesting also. I think Ferguson will do well early in the fight. I think Li Jingliang is going to have a little filling out process. He is going to check some calf kicks. He will be dodging the power punches of Jingliang Li, landing some elbows early in the fight, but I think as the fight goes on, we will see Jingliang Li work more with his distance and opening up with Leach's power. and KO Tony. Jingliang is very tough and can take a lot of damage from his opponents. People will bring up his last fight against Muslim Salikov that he took after 9 months of being inactive after the Chimaev fight. But he was a little rusty in that fight. In the first round, he didn't look quite himself. He wasn't kind of committing to too much. He was getting hurt quite a bit. Kind of had a feeling out process too, because Salikov was landing some good kicks in there too. But I think Jingliang will find his opening and KO Tony in the latter part of the first or early second round. I'm also taking into account that Ferguson is fighting 3 months after he was brutally knocked out. For some reason, he thought that was a great idea. I don't think he is fully recovered. There's no way he's fully recovered after being flatline KO'd like that, brutally knocked out 3 months ago. Like, there's no way that is possible. He's not going to be taking shots the same way, I think. I don't think he recovered fully. 3 months is so short. I'm going to go Jingliang Elise for this matchup, the Leech. For the main event of the evening, we have Khamzat Chimaev versus Nate Diaz. Last fight was a win over Gilbert Burns. Has some good power in his hands. Is very explosive. Questionable cardio during that fight, but it was a very high pace. I mean, I wouldn't even call it questionable cardio in general. It was a very high-paced fight. You can't really get mad at the cardio being crazy, but it is something to keep into account. Does have some good wrestling. Absolutely demolishes guys. Like I just said, he picked up the Leech. Absolutely kind of, I don't want to say embarrassed him, but he went up to Dana, started talking to him, threw him on the ground. Like, that's the kind of strength he's got. That's the kind of wrestling he's got. Absolutely crazy power, crazy explosiveness. But yeah. So for Nate Diaz, his last fight was a loss to Leon Edwards. Has a solid 1-2, but not too much heat in his hands. Isn't as accurate as he used to be. Kind of just throws him out there, stopped and slap, whatever you want to call it. He also has some solid jiu-jitsu on the ground. Also, for this fight, I think they're feeding Diaz to the Wolves, and in particular, the Wolf Boars. The matchup on paper is very interesting because Diaz is very tough and is very durable. But he is way older than he used to be. Like, this is an older Nate Diaz. Is he going to be able to take the shots, be as durable as he used to be? I have no idea. Like, this isn't Leon Edwards. Although Leon Edwards is the champion, this isn't, like, Khamzat Chimaev was a different animal. Another interesting factor in this matchup is the wrestling of Chimaev versus the jiu-jitsu of Nate Diaz. I really don't think it's that interchangeable, realistically. For Gilbert Burns, like, I believe his jiu-jitsu is better than Nate Diaz. And obviously, Khamzat, you can say, struggled with finishing Gilbert Burns on the ground because of the jiu-jitsu. But I feel like he probably could have stuck it out on the ground if he wanted to during the fight. But he did kind of, like, let the crowd into his head. Will he do it again here if Nate Diaz makes it past the first round? I don't know. We'll see. But I think he has a specific job to do here, and that is to ruin Nate Diaz for the UFC. So for this fight, I think he's just going to go out there, maybe try. I don't know what he's going to try to do. So here's the thing. There's two ways this matchup could go. I could see Khamzat Chimaev go out there and just pop him and drop him down on the ground and then just finish him there, TKO him. If there's ever a fight where the ref kind of does a little early stoppage or an early Nate Diaz stoppage, this would be the fight. I think he does TKO him in the early first round. But I could also see, you know, will he try to play with the food a little bit? Will he try to embarrass Nate Diaz in the fight? I have no idea. I think he does want to end it early, though. Get that win. How do they want to beat Nate Diaz? I don't know. That's up to him, realistically. But I'm going to go with the first round TKO. Nate Diaz is very durable. They'll say early stoppage. It's completely fine. I don't know if they want to embarrass Nate Diaz just by TKOing him, or if they actually, like, want to thoroughly, like, throw him around, mess with him a little bit. I don't know. I think it'll be an early TKO, though. So that's what I have for this card. I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. Make sure you tune in for this week's stuff. I have Contender Series stuff going on early Tuesday morning. I believe I do have Contender Series predictions coming out. And then throughout the week, I think I'll post these predictions or something, or if fights are being made, I'll post predictions to those. But yeah, we have another fight night after this, so we'll be stocked and loaded for fight nights for a while. I think we do get another 2-week break coming up soon. But if you guys enjoyed the breakdown, make sure you comment down below. Tell me who you think will win this fight, all the other fights on the card. Some of these fights can really go either way. Some of these fights can be really competitive. A lot of the fights on the betting also, I don't see like many minus 300s in there. For Khamzat Chimaev, he's like a minus 1100 in the fight, and that's like the biggest underdog or biggest favorite on the card, obviously. But all the other ones are like minus 200s, plus 100s, and things like that. So it's relatively close fights there. So yeah, very competitive card. Especially, I believe the Jingliang Lee versus Tony Ferguson and the Holland versus Rodriguez ones will probably get some questions or something like that. Get some issues in the comments like it did for my other video. But we'll see how that goes. It's going to be a very entertaining card. I hope it turns out very well. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you tune into other stuff during the week. And yeah, see you guys next time.